I've been collecting vinyl for many years, traveling to shops and shows across the country. I've spoke with collectors, shop owners, and music industry professionals along the way. As vinyl records are having a comeback, so are the stories behind them. I'm Gary Skolnick on The Record Beat. What made you a record collector? At what age did you start the obsession that a true record collector like you and myself have?
Yeah.
What began that obsession?
Probably 5 years old. My dad was an electronic whiz. And one year, my dad gave me a Zenith, a used record player for myself, and played 16, 33, 45, and 78s. He gave me a bunch of 45s, and they were colored. They were children's records. You know, they were Roy Rogers. They were Buffalo Gals, Won't You Come Out Tonight? Right. And just to be able to put the needle on the record and watching it go around, a colored yellow record, and listen to Buffalo Gals, I was like, what? You know, I went crazy. I loved it.
Right.
My father had Spike Jones. He had Duke Ellington. He had Billie Holiday 78s. I could play all that stuff. So I listened to Ella, and I listened to Billie, and I listened to Duke, and I listened to Spike Jones. I listened to Louis Jordan's Symphony 5, and it was just another world. So as a young kid, get a few years older. I had a brother who was 4 years older than me. So at about 10 years old, I started, listening. This is like 1958 now, and I'm listening to radio, and I'm listening to the LAC in Nashville, on a transoceanic, and I'm listening to Hoss Allen, and I hear, Good Golly Miss Molly, and Peggy Sue, and I hear, the Coasters and the Clovers.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, that was it. When I heard, Tutti Frutti, Hunter, that was it. Fats Domino's, Blueberry Hill. I started, my brother could take the bus into town. I was too young. So we pooled our money, whether I was collecting bottles or cards or whatever. And I'd give my brother my lunch money or whatever hell I had, paper route money, and we'd make a list of 45s that we had to get, so he'd go in town, he'd pick them up, So, as a kid, I had Elvis, I had Chuck Berry, I had all the 45s. I remember playing Fats Domino's Blueberry Hill and flipping it over Honey Child, the flip side. And to this day, it's still in my head what the flips were,
Yeah.
And so it was just I always had it. It was like as a young kid, I was just enamored with records,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, that it comes that way.
Yep.
A desert island, top 10. You're going away, man.
Wow.
You're never coming back. You got 10 records.
Wow. John Martin's Solid Air, Nick Drake, Brighter Later, Van Morrison's Astral Weeks, Howlin' Wolf's The Rockin' Chair album, Robert Johnson, Buddy Guy's I Smell a Rat, Jerry Lee Lewis, any of the Sun material, Little Richard, Coltrane, Blue Train, Oliver Nelson.
What record, and I already know the answer to this, so I'm going to say except for the Bob Marley signed record.
Yeah.
What record would you not sell?
These are blues records right in here I wouldn't sell. Probably the one up there of the most is a promo copy of the first Robert Johnson that I bought down here for $2.99 at the Bookworm. I paid $2.99.
Wow.
And it has the label says demonstration, not for sale.
Yeah.
And it's a 6-eye Columbia. It's probably worth $1,500 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I wouldn't sell it because it would for anything. It's just one of those records.
That's what I'm talking about.
And I still play it. I still love it. But yeah, Robert Johnson.
I bump into you all the time at record stores.
Mm-hmm.
What are you looking for there?
I'll be honest with you. Most of the time, I'm looking for things that have fallen through the cracks. By that I mean
you can make money.
Most of it. Discogs and all these Pop Psych and all these sites. You can look up any record and see what it sold for. But
right.
Sometimes there's these obscure Greek records or Haitian kompas and weird international soundtracks, Greek 78s, Helvetica, like blues, and stuff like that. I look for weird off the wall things that just they're down on the bottom, like
Oh yeah.
There's some stuff, there's $2 shit over there. I look for that kind of stuff,
Right.
And I can't even begin to tell you the stuff I found, $1,200, $1,000 records, in the $2 box,
Yeah.
And then sometimes I shouldn't give away all my secrets, but I will. I'll look for these records that'll come out and they just have white labels, and especially if they're Jamaican white labels, they call them blanks, They're not promos. They're just they did blanks, and the DJs loved him because you couldn't see who the artists were.
Right.
So I'll see these, and the thing is, they don't know how to price it because it's a blank label. There's nothing on it.
Right.
But in the matrix is in the dead wax, the wax,
Yeah,
the
where
dead
the numbers
wax.
are, yeah.
Right. That's a whole hit. That's everything. So I'll find the matrix, and I have books on the matrix numbers, and I'll look up a matrix, man, and I'll find that it could be a $300-400 reggae
Wow.
record. Yeah. So and I have a site too that I've been on for years. That just all you got to do is put the matrix in, and it pops up, tells you who, what produced it, and everything. And I've made some great money. I mean, I'll look for, if I see something for myself. I mean, I'll buy sometimes some of the newer things, that are coming out.
Sure.
So DJ will. I just a couple of weeks ago, I picked up the new Charlie Pickett, which I love.
Okay.
Yeah,
I picked that up
Yeah,
myself.
I love that record. Yeah.
Just to
So
support.
I'll pick up, but most of the time I'm just digging. I'm looking for stuff, Plus, I like to just hang out and talk to the guys.
That's my comfort place,
Yeah.
and that's
too.
what I do.
Yep.
And yeah, that's
Just
why
to see
I'm
what's
here
what's
with you.
hip, what they're listening to.
Yeah.
So the people at Radioactive are sweet, and
Yeah.
and Tony at We Get the Beach,
Uh-huh.
great guy. I always love to go in there and hang out. And
Yeah.
the guy who's at the other store. it's
Eventually,
always
you
real
get
nice.
to know them, and
Yep.
they all have a thing.
Yep.
And
And they love me,
Yeah.
They know I've been at it for a long time, so they always,
Oh, yeah.
they're always like real respectful.
Oh yeah, the promotion guy. I mean, I have to admit, I love the music, and that's where it starts and comes from.
course.
But I fell in love with record covers
Yeah.
and the information on those covers and the pictures. To me, every one of those is a work of art.
Absolutely.
And I get a lot of fun out of that. And then you get that one album I'm going to use, Jonathan Richman and the Modern Lovers.
Yeah.
It's the most geeky looking cover you've
Yeah.
ever seen.
Yeah.
You would never buy it on a whim. and then you do, and you say, wow, look
And
what
it's
I
great.
found.
Yeah.
Yeah. You ever hear of a guy named Willie Alexander?
Sure, the Boom Boom Band.
Yeah.
I knew Willie. I used to go to the Paradise and hang out with him.
I kind of.
I had when I was with Arista, we had the Stiff deal. We had Arista Stiff.
Oh, okay.
So we had all the punk shit. We had Nick Lowe. We had Elvis Costello. Well, Elvis was through Columbia here, but in England he was on Stiff. So,
Right.
But when he toured over here, it was Columbia. So I didn't have Elvis, but I had Ian Dury and the Blockheads.
Yeah.
So I took him on the road, and I had Patti Smith.
Yeah.
We had. So I used to pick Patty up at the airport, man, literally, and Lenny Kaye, our guitarist, and I was working Because the Night. They gave me a gold record. I had the first top 40 station in America on Because the Night. That was WRKO in Boston. This was like 78 when I was up there, and then we had like Gil Scott-Heron. We had a lot of great artists. We had Rick Danko from the band.
Right.
We had Donovan.
Right.
We had Loudon Wainwright on so. I had all those artists, but I'd see Willie. He would call me, and I'd take him to I took him to meet Patty, and I took him to see Ian Dury. So it was all. I knew all the label guys. So if the Clash were playing, I'd get a call from a CBS guy, and I'd get tickets to the Clash.
Right.
I saw Tom Waits open for fucking Blondie.
Wow.
I was hanging out with Blondie backstage. So
Wow.
the Paradise was the shit in the '70s.
Yes.
That was owned by Don Law, who was a record promoter back in the days, and he had Club 47 in Cambridge, but he opened up this Paradise, and all my artists would play there. Saw Tom Petty, saw the Ramones there and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew Willie. I loved Willie Alexander, Boom Boom Band. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean.
Why do you mention him? You know?
Yeah, I just got all his albums.
Yeah. The one with the cannon, the big cannon on it. Yeah.
Loved his first album.
Yeah.
I thought his version of "You Lost That Love and Feeling"
Right.
is
That's
excellent.
right. Yeah.
I mean, it destroys the song a little bit,
Yeah.
but I love those covers like that.
So do I. Yeah, Willie was a beautiful cat, man. He was so, he never gave up. He was on MCA, different labels.
Yeah.
And he was always hanging out. I'd see him at the radio stations if he had, and he'd even DJ. BCN was a big powerhouse radio station. WRKO, WBC.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of, say, Charlie Pickett.
Yeah,
Charlie Pickett has been like the South connection to underground music for all these years,
Absolutely.
and never was able to rise above it all.
And it's all good.
But a local musician.
Yeah. That's the same thing. Good analogy.
Yeah.
Willie was the same way.
Yeah.
But loved in Boston. Totally.
Yeah.
Everybody loved
Yeah.
Willie. Yeah.
So I mean, just that whole life.
Yeah.
Again, it's my thing too.
Yeah.
Like yours.
Yep.
And we have a mutual friend had a mutual friend in David Benjamin.
Yeah.
What a gentleman.
Yep.
And such a cool guy.
Yes, he was.
And for him to see in me what he saw in you.
Yeah, he did.
Was so cool.
Yep.
And
that's nice that he took the time, and he
absolutely
he was my mentor, my hero, man. If anybody was, I'll show you a couple of pictures that he gave me too.
Yeah, I'm glad
you know what? I got one with him and James Brown, and I got one with him and Ali, and it said to Dave, the only man I'm afraid of, Muhammad Ali.
See, that's great. Okay, so after you started doing the promotion, at some point. You kind of moved on and did what? Went independent first?
My first promotion was with Henry. I got into the sales. Then I started representing Motown and all the different labels. And then this is my next job. Talk about a jump. In 69, 70, Warner Brothers, Elektra and Atlantic decided to go the route of CBS, because CBS
I remember
and
that.
MCA, they had their own distribution, their own sales force, their own promotion rep, and Warner Brothers felt, hey, we're not getting that. We're Warner Brothers now. We've built up a fucking roster.
Right.
We got Randy, and we've got Zappa, and we've got Rundgren, and we've
Halen,
got all of catalog and the Coltrane and the jazz, and they said, we're going to form. They formed WEA,
right?
The WEA, Warner Electra Atlanta.
I remember that.
And that was in the early '70s,
right.
And because they took Dave Benjamin and they said he's our sales manager,
right.
So I said to Dave, you got to take me with you, And I wanted to do promotion because I was fully in promotion then, right? And he goes, well, it's not entirely up to me, but of course I'm going to put you're my first choice. But he said, there's a guy in Atlanta named Bill Biggs. Didn't know him from a can of paint. He says, and he's my boss. He's got to have, and these guys are bringing their cronies in.
Sure.
It's like when a program director leaves the station, new management.
Yeah.
They get bringing their people.
Right.
So I'm thinking like, oh fuck. Now meanwhile, I was still working with Henry. I was still, and then by then I was working on the bus 7071 WBUS, and I was doing a weekend blues show, nothing but the blues as Boston Bob. Because I didn't, first off, I was promoting records, I was selling records, and I had a DJ job. Think about it, right? But the thing is, I was doing blues. I wasn't forcing them to play my Atlantic records, even though they played King Crimson and all the cool shit that I brought to the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
So I took a job on the bus and I did the weekends, and I gave them a lot of advertising dollars. I did my blues show on the weekends, Harlem Wolf, Muddy Waters, all the Sonny Boy, all the greats, right? So I'm on the air one night. It's a Saturday night. I only did Saturday night. And I'm on the air and it's midnight. And I get a call. And the guy asked for if I could play some Robert Johnson. And I said, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. I said, man, I love the Delta stuff. We're talking. And he goes, yeah. He says, I come down here a couple months a year, and I always tune into the station. I really like the station. He says, I'm in the music business. I said, oh, I'm in the music business. He says, you are? What do you do? I says, who do you work for? I says, I work for Tone Distributors. He goes, oh, Henry Stone? I go, yeah, I work for Henry. So what do you do there? I said, I do promotion. I said, sales and promotion, marketing for the. He says, yeah. He says, that's my distributor. I said, oh yeah, what label are you with? And he says, Atlantic. No, he says, that was my distributor. And I says, Atlantic. He says, yeah, my name's Jerry Wexler. I almost dropped the phone. I mean, this was my hero.
Right.
The Coasters, the Clovers, Ruth Brown, Ray Charles, you name it, Atlantic.
Right.
Anyways, I said, we keep talking, and I said, hey, would you want to come down and do a show? We'll do a show on Atlantic Records. He says, yeah, absolutely. 3 weeks later, long story short, he comes to the studio. He has 2 reel-to-reel tapes. One of them is Aretha Franklin, Amazing Grace, that he had cut in L.A. with James Cleveland. And the other one was Dr. John's Gumbo album, which was a traditional New Orleans record that he made, with all the Earl King, all the great New Orleans cats. And we debuted those, and he brought Jackie DeShannon with him, the singer-songwriter. He had just signed to the label. and we did like 4 hours with me, a guy named the Cosmic Traveler, Michael Dean. But it was my show. You know, I put everything together. You know, I'd play like a Ray Charles cut, like Drown in My Own Tears, and he would come on. I'd give him the mic. He was right here to my right. You know, we're smoking and drinking. And he'd say, you know, that was Ray Charles, man. We cut that in a ballpark in Atlanta, GA, man. It was a benefit for one of the local radio stations, and we did that in one day. It was just amazing. He talked about Sam and Dave, Wilson Pickett's in the studio, just on and on. Professor Longhair, Ruth Brown, the Coasters, Joe Turner. He's the man that wrote the book on rock and roll. The reason I got into business, so, you know, Atlantic Records that I had as a kid, you know, and here I am with my fucking hero. I mean,
crazy.
It's just mind-boggling, right? 3 weeks later, I was the WIA promo rep. How can he say no?
Yeah.
He invited me. He had a boat across at the Intercoastal, across from the Fontainebleau. He had this yacht, you know, president of Atlantic Records.
Yeah.
He invited me and Dave. We went down there for a lunch. Had this Chinese guy serving, Japanese guy. Went in the back and he had all these reel-to-reels and test pressings and acetates, playing records all afternoon with Jerry Wexler.
Wow.
And I was the WIA promo man.
Wow.
So what a step from Tone Distributors to Warner Electric Atlantic.
Right.
And that was...
You're in the biggest
I'm
in the business at that
Where's
point.
my office? Criteria Studios. 2nd floor. Atlantic Records downstairs. WIA, right? They're coming. Hey, Bob, we got Donnie. Come here, say hi to Aretha. Come here, say hi to Eric Clapton. Yeah, we're doing this. Dwayne Allman. We're doing the Layla sessions next week. I want you, you know, we're going down to the Playboy Club to see Donny Hathaway. Here's Wexler introducing me to Dylan. Dylan was in the studio doing background vocals for Doug Sahm from Sir Douglas Quintet, the Wallflower album that he did. You know, came up to use my office to do a couple lines and smoke a joint or something, you know, and you know, and sign the contracts or whatever.
Wow.
But I mean, it was like, and then I was on the road. It was, you know, I was still single then, and I was doing tours with Alice Cooper and Dr. John, Todd Rundgren. I mean, it just, you know, come home for 2 days, throw my stuff, you know, get some new clothes, go back out on the road, you know, taking them to radio stations all up and down the state.
This is what year?
This was, well, it's WIA, W-A, 72.
72?
Yeah,
Wow.
early 70s, yeah.
Wow.
With my office over at Criteria, Mac Emmerman, who owned Criteria Studios. You know, I mean, everybody came to the Bee Gees, L.B. Galutin, the two guys that did the Layla record, the two brothers, I forget, Steve Alamo. Anyway, it was just amazing. So that's when it all really broke. That's when I, you know, I mean, it was like from that level now. I was at WEA working the greatest record companies in the world. You know, Elektra Records, Jack Holzman, you know, Geffen. We had the Asylum deal. We had, you know, Joni. We had the Eagles. We had, you name it. I mean, it was just coming at me so fast. You know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the early 70s, which is all the start of, say, the Allman Brothers?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right?
Well, they used to record at Tone. They would come down and do gigs. Jocko, all of those guys were in and out of the studios. Yeah, they were like session guys. I mean, Dwayne, I used to go take Dwayne through the warehouse before, when they came back from California, they were the Allman Joys still. And Dwayne would come into the warehouse and I'd show him, because we had chess blues, and I'd show him all the Delta shit, give him a load of fucking records. He was in heaven, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So him and Dwayne, yeah, I mean, Dwayne would come in and, you know, I'd take care of him back in the days. Yeah.
So you would be in Criteria?
Criteria, yeah. I mean, I wasn't always in the studio, but a couple of times Tom brought me down when Aretha was recording there. He brought me in on the Layla sessions. They did Why Does Love Gotta Be So Bad? And I knew Dwayne anyway, because I'd met him earlier. But I met Clapton real briefly, you know, because they were very quiet. I just went. I was like a fly on the wall. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was wet. It was Tom Dowd and L.B. Galutin, and I'm trying to think of these other two producers that did the album. Mac Emmerman was there, Tom Dowd, myself, and, you know, maybe one of the wives or something.
Right.
It wasn't many. It was like 5 or 6 people in the studio. But I had a chance to see Dwayne and Eric perform. You know.
Wow.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just the people that were coming. Okay, so now you're with WIA. How long did you stay with them?
Stayed with them for a year and a half. I got an offer. I was very content, very happy, but I got an offer from a startup company called Heiliger Brothers. They were in Opelika by the airport, and they had all. Now Henry had pretty much petered out because he lost Warner's, Elektra, Atlantic. That was a lot of his business. So he started going into the TK and started going into more of the, promotion and production, and Bobby Caldwell and Casey and the Sunshine Band. So he was moving into that. So this company called Heiliger Brothers was owned by American Can out of Minneapolis. They had all the labels that Henry couldn't deal with anymore. Couldn't pay them.
Right.
So they had Motown, Fantasy, blah 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 blah, and they made me. And the thing, the weird was I was partial to Atlantic, because it was Wexler that hired me. But Warner's was putting a lot of pressure and Elektra, because even though I was promoting, whether it was Bread or whatever artist they had, it wasn't, and this wasn't a pop market. Right. Whereas Atlantic had a lot of soul, and I could get a lot of soul stuff played. But they weren't really 100% behind me. But Atlantic was, and Atlantic made me an offer. Atlantic wanted me to be their local guy. But the appeal of working as an independent, working for a lot of different labels, I knew there was more money to be made.
Right.
So you work for one company, Heiliger, they pay you a salary and you cover your expenses, but you've got 15 labels, and they know there's a lot of incentive. They know that I'm responsible. I have a lot of records to deal with, but they could give me a couple $100 extra. Record goes on, top. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Top of the heap. And if it was a good record, I didn't give a shit. I wanted to get it played regardless whether there was an incentive or not. I was getting paid.
Right.
But I knew with WIA I could stay here. With Heiliger, I could stay here and work all these independent labels, and that's what I did. I took the Heiliger position, and I had every label in the business: Buddha, Casablanca, Young Ups, new labels.
Yeah.
Island, Fantasy, Chess, all the labels.
But now you could not distribute WIA products and
no, we didn't do that. We only dealt with independent stuff.
Okay.
So I took that, and then from there, when I was telling you that when Clive took over Arista Records, it was Bell Records, and I used to talk to him, but he was just one of my independent labels. You know what I mean? Arista was an independent label.
Yeah.
And but I like talking to Clive. I like Henry Stone, Jerry Wexler, Clive Davis. Some pretty cool guys in the business.
Biggest names in the business.
And I knew Clive's history from Columbia, CBS, signing Big Brother, Dylan, and everybody, and Bruce Springsteen. So at that time, he didn't, he had just started the label, but I looked out for Clive, because he took care of me too.
Right.
So we broke the Melissa Manchester, we broke the Bay City Rollers, Saturday Night, Barry Manilow and Mandy. The rest is history, So and then a lot of new things started coming down the pike. He started with the punk things, the Grateful Dead, and then one day out of the blue, he made me an offer, a tremendous offer, and I took it.
Huh.
And I thought, after I was with Heiliger for about a year, and I did really well with them, but I thought, it'd be nice just to have one fucking label, just one label. And I liked Clive. I knew, I had respect for him. I knew this guy. If anybody's going to do it, it's this guy. And he had Columbia Pictures behind him, so there's plenty of money.
Right.
So he made me an offer, and I took it. It was really a good offer. And I started with Clive. We broke records, and I stayed with him for about a year and a half. And I got a job offer. I wanted to get out of Miami. It was my father had passed. I'd been down here from 68 to 70. It was like 76 now. I was getting a little burnt out. I did this market. I've done everything I could do. I felt, and I really wanted to go back home. I wanted to go to Boston. So I put it out there that I wanted to go to Boston. And Atlantic Records found out that I did, and they made me an offer to go to Boston, and I took it. And I called Clive, and I said, Clive, I just wanted to say, first off, thank you for the 2 years. Oh, he said, don't tell me. I said, no, I took a job offer with Atlantic. He said, why? I said, well, then I want to go back. I want to go. They're taking me to Boston, and I'm gonna have all of New England, and and I just want to get back home. I want to get out of Miami. My wife and I talked about it. It was just a good time to go, and she was pregnant at the time with my daughter, who's now 40. So he goes, listen, let me call you back. He calls me back in 10 minutes. He goes, listen, I can give you L.A. I said, Clive, I'm an East Coast. I don't want to go to L.A. It's the last place I want to go.
Right.
I says, and I knew Richie. I knew the guy in Boston. He was like a friend. I knew this guy. He's a crazy guy. He goes, well, I'm going to call Richie and I'm going to have you guys swap. I said, well, he's not going to want to do that. He says, he'll do it. He called me back and he says, done. You wanted to go to Boston? Go to Boston. So I said, I called Dickie Kleinbeck, who was a vice president of Atlantic, and I said, I'm taking the, I figured it was with Clive. And he goes, hey, whatever, if you decide you want to leave, you're welcome. So I went to Boston for Arista, and we exploded. Arista in 77, 78.
Yeah.
Like I said.
That's Patti Smith.
Patti Smith, Gil Scott-Heron, Rick Danko, the Kinks, the Grateful Dead. I was taking Ray Davies around and, working with Bob Weir and Patty and
wow.
everybody, the Stiff Deal, Nick Lowe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll show you some pictures of all of us at the radio station. Alan Parsons Project, just on and on and on. Great label, great company. And, Anthony Braxton, we had a great jazz series, So it was great. And I spent 2 years in Boston, but I got that sand in my shoes. I wanted to come back. The blizzard of 78. After 2 years, I'm like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
What do you mean, my cord of wood? I got to get a cord of wood. I'm like, oh man, I couldn't get oil.
Yeah.
Oh no, we'll be up there in 3 days. My pipes are fucking hemorrhaging. And I'm living in Newton, just outside of Boston, in an old English Tudor, which is all brick and slate.
Yeah.
And it was, beautiful home and all, but it cold as shit. So you know what? It was wonderful. I had the whole Northeast,
Yeah.
And then, believe it or not, I got another offer before I came back. I got an offer that doubled my salary, and I was doing great with Arista, and it was Areola, they were owned by Der Spiegel, which is like the New York Times of Germany still. And they had a big publishing wing, that owned Acuff Rose Publishing, and I had a good old boy that I used to promote in Atlanta, and he became the national promotion director, and he knew I was a hotshot promo guy. So he said, hey, Bar, what the hell's going to take you to get over here to Areola? I'm coming from Beverly Hills, Wilshire. I said, man, you telling me to leave Arista? I said, all you've got is torn between two lovers, Mary McGregor? He said, well, I can give you $60,000, $78. $60,000 plus expenses and give you the whole Northeast, the whole territory. You go to New York, Philadelphia, put your staff together. Right. So I said, sounds good to me, man. He flew me out to Beverly Hills on a weekend. I didn't tell Clive. I flew out on a Friday. I was back in Boston on a Monday, and to go over for Areola. And they had like Japan.
I remember Japan.
They had Herman Brood and his Wild Romance. Yeah, we had a group called Chanson. They had a record called Don't Hold Back, which was James Jamerson, the famous bass player from Motown. His group. We had with Japan. We also had this one artist that she had a knock on wood. Amy Stewart became a huge, big disco hit. And anyways, we had a few things. And I stayed with them for about another year and a half, maybe 2 years. And that's when I said, no, I'm coming back to Miami.
So who welcomed you back to Miami?
Look, after all that shit behind me, I says, it was pretty hard to go to work for anybody but me.
Sure.
I says, they brought me up. I made these contacts. These are my friends. These are my radio people. The guys that I worked with, all of New England, all of the Northeast, that I knew and nurtured these radio guys. I'd see them every week. So when I came back, I'm not going to work for anybody. So I set up Bob Perry Promotions, and I became an independent on my own. And I saw with these other independents around the country. Now, this we're getting into the whole other thing. This is payola and everything.
Yes.
It's a very, very big. I can talk about it now. I never did.
Yeah.
But and it, not off the record.
And was that a growing trend in that time?
Yeah, it was.
Why don't you grab that
When
water?
when I got to Boston, I saw how big it was. I saw the amount of money these independent promoters made. These independent promoters were striking deals with record companies. Thank you. They were striking deals with record companies for one record for 25, 30,000, 40,000. And I mean, who was that money? It wasn't. They weren't getting the money. They were distributing the money.
Yeah.
With major program directors, you know, which made you feel like, hey, what am I doing here? You know,
Right.
I'm out there at the radio station. I'm plugging away, and this program director is tied in with, you know, and nobody knew that. The payola scandal reared its head, and just when I left Boston about '79, I came down here and I became an independent record because I knew I hooked up with some of these independent guys, and I knew what they were going to the artists, they were going to the management, they were going to the publishers, and they were going to the record companies. These guys are so powerful that they could keep a Pink Floyd hit or whoever the fuck, a Clash hit, off the radio.
Right.
No matter how big the record was around them, they could keep it off so that they could get that deal, that $15,000 or $20,000 deal, and then put it on the radio station. You know what I mean? It was control. It was powerful. It was, you know, and it was territorial. Because if I decided to work a record in another market, I got threatened. And it wasn't. I was threatened. I got tipped off. Was saying, hey, I could say, well, look, my best friend, my brother. You know, they say even if your brother owned the radio station, you stay out of that market. You don't claim. You know, I'm trying legitimately to get something played.
Right.
And these guys are in a whole other. I mean, for example, I started working with some of these guys, and they're going, yeah, we got a new record here this week. They give me like 10 records, but they had to be played that week. They give me 10 records, but they'd be like 2,000 a record. But, you know, it had to go on Tuesday.
Right.
So they don't care how you did it. You know, we just want, you know, if you get it, and we got to know about it before anybody else, right? But they would give me a list of records. I go, well, what's it like? Oh, Mickey, yeah, Tony Basil, hey, he's a good singer. I'm like, they didn't even know who the artist was. They could care less.
Right.
They just controlled it.
Right.
They controlled powerhouse stations in you know, KHJ in LA, Boston, New York. I can mention the callers. I have lists of what the prices, what they went for. I mean, you know, so it was. I realized that opened my eyes and said, you know, that business changed a lot.
Right.
And I'm glad the payola rated its head because I didn't own anybody and I
Right.
never tried to own anybody.
Right.
I worked the record, you know. But even the record labels were the guys I was working for. If I called an ad in, if I got a record played like Patti Smith because the night RKO played it because they had to play it because I got BZ, I got BCN, I got every radio station in the goddamn I surrounded them. So and here's a powerhouse top 40 radio. They had to play it.
Right.
So when they played it, it was because I got it played because I promoted it, I marketed it, but the independent took the credit.
Yeah.
Because what did he do? He was a bag man. He just went and gave them the money. So and don't you think when I called it in and they'd get all excited, they already knew the night before. You know, they'd be, oh, great, Bob, great, Bob. Yeah, I felt like saying, fuck you, you know. You fucking independent got the money, and I put the record in. I jockeyed it into position, and he got the $4,000. But you know what I do? I beat them at their own fucking game. I go, hey, listen, I got Patti Smith and I got Alan Parsons on. I had 2 hits this week on RKO, Powerhouse Radio. The rest of the country will fall in right behind because it's RKO, right? I says, you know what? But look, it cost me about $500, so I had to take Harry and all these people out to dinner. Fuck. So I said, yeah, just send me 250 records. That's all. Okay, Bob. Yeah, you know what are they gonna do? Not award me my records? Right. I hang up the phone and say, fuck you. So they send me $500. Send me 250 records. I cashed it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how powerful. See, the independent guy's not going to call me because the ads would come in on a Tuesday, and I'd call him like Tuesday afternoon as soon as I knew my record was on the radio. But the independent knew it Monday night. So Arista, all the labels were in on it.
Yeah.
Fucking total payola. So when I came down, I said, you know what? I want that action. You know. I mean, but I'll get it on my way. You know what I mean? I'll do it legit. And they would give me like 10 records. You know. One time Neil Sedaka. I got a call from Freddie He was a big. He was in the book. There's a book by a guy named Gannon. It's about payola and MCA. That whole
Yeah.
great book on the subject. Yeah, he's a lawyer. He researched and everything. And there was a guy. He names all the names.
Hitman.
A great fucking book. Man, I'm surprised I wasn't in there, but I'm glad I wasn't. But everybody else I knew. Every guy I worked for. But there's a fucking Philadelphia guy named Freddie DiCipio. Gangster motherfucker. He was the one that I knew. He threatened. Another buddy of mine called me and said, "Hey, stay out of Freddie's fucking territory." I said, "He's in Philly now. He's got the DC station too. Don't fuck with, he'll break your fucking legs." I'm like, "It's so funny." He said, "Hey, I'm telling you, word to the wise,
Yeah, right.
He was right. I said, "It ain't worth it. It's not worth it."
Yeah,
My best friend was Y100 was at PGC in Washington. I couldn't promote his records.
Huh.
This is how powerful Freddie was. He added the record. It was a Neil Sedaka record. I got $10,400 from Sedaka. I got 3 stations. I got Y100, I got PGC in Washington, and one other station. I forget, Boston, I think, BC. But he sent me a check for $10,000. It's like 78. Neil Sedaka. I'm like, holy shit, that's the kind of money.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the biggest incentive check I ever got. But I gave him 3. And what happened is when Freddie found out that I claimed PGC in Washington, the station dropped the record. So in other words, my buddy, who was the music director, said, "I want this record on because it's a good record, hit record." The general manager came in and took it off.
Wow.
And then 3 weeks later, it went back on. Freddie got paid. They never asked me for my money back, and I sure as hell wasn't going to give it to him anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's powerful shit. So anyway, getting back to the reason, when I came back, to answer your question, I said, I'm doing independent. So I started my own company, Bob Perry Promotions. I took everything that I knew at that point, all my contacts, my friends, and I went to work.
So now this is late 70s.
1979, 80.
Okay, so
1980.
right before then.
Before then, like 3 years before I opened the store.
So at
But
that
then
point,
it started going to shit. That's when the payolas in the 80s, when the payola scandal reared its head. I'm watching the TV one night and I see them arresting these fucking guys and Morris Levy at Roulette, all these mafioso cats, that were doing all the heads of all these families, Genovese, they were all involved in the music, right?
Yeah.
All of them, MCA, they were all fucking gangsters. When I saw that and I recognized these I'm like, the next fucking day, I had Warner Brothers, Polydor, RC, I had every account, I had managers, I had everybody I was doing business with, right? Sedaka, money was coming in, man. Living in Miami Lakes on a lake, beautiful, wonderful, great, driving an XK 140 56 Jaguar, had a Mercedes in the front. I was living that high life.
Yeah.
And everybody stopped. They said, no more. Even the good ones and bad ones. Freddie, everybody, all the labels said, that's it, brakes on.
No more independent.
No more. Because they didn't want it to go any further.
Yeah.
They could have got back to the record companies.
Oh,
it did.
Sure.
Some of them did.
I remember this.
They were gangsters.
Yeah.
They were like, the whole thing get corrupt. It got totally corrupt.
Always.
Totally fucking corrupt.
What always happens.
Yeah. So what happened? I said, hey, you know what? I was still doing some independent work, and I was in around 82, 83. I was at WBJW in Orlando, and I was, hanging out with this one program director of a Billboard station. I called Sophia, and we were living in Miami Lakes. She goes, I just had to sign UPS $200 on these blues records. Why don't you open a goddamn store? You got enough records. And I thought about that. That was the thing. I said, you know what? I'm not getting any younger at this shit, and this ain't the record business that I knew.
Right.
It ain't the business I knew.
Right.
And when she said that, I'm glad she did, because I was thinking about doing that. And I thought, if I open a store, why did I get in this business when I was 5 years old? The passion that I had for that music, and I still have that passion. It's still there.
Yes.
And the love I have and the respect that I have for these people. I'm not just throwing names out there. They were people that I, the magic was listening to that stuff, and it just took me to another place, and it still does,
And then to have seen
and then to have met them, to have worked with them. all my fucking heroes. I gave Sophia an engagement ring at a Lightning Hopkins concert, and I took her backstage to meet Willie Dixon, and Greg Allman was back there, and John Hammond was back there, and she met, Sophia was gracious, we met them all, we had, and they were friends, so it was, what a blessing, to have met, 72 now, 71, and to spend my whole life, from 18 years old to now, doing and when I look back, man, like the dead, what a long, strange trip,
Yeah.
And we always did it our way, I went for it. It felt good. She was pregnant. Alicia was born in Cambridge. We had a great time in Boston. We met some great people. Still friends to this day, and radio guys that I know. And but to me, that's what it's all about. In retrospect, I look at it, and I wouldn't have done anything different. Maybe saved a little more money, but fuck it, we had a good time.
So the store.
Yep.
So you look around your house at that time?
I did. I had tons of records, and and I also had a lot of guys in radio. So I started making some calls, and I caught to a friend of mine, and it was a WKWF in Key West. I forgot what I had for lunch yesterday, but I remember radio stations. And this is like 82, 83. He said, "Hey Bob, we're changing format. Come on and take all this shit. We don't want any of these records." I go down to Key West, and they're in this big old above ground like barn, and I open the doors. I get down there, and there's rats all over the rafters.
Oh wow!
Sophia says, "I'll be back in a couple of hours." She left. Fuck this. And I literally, I went in. I had a bat, and I was banging the things, and they would run. And I'd go in, and I'd pull out boxes. It wasn't too bad, but I mean, in the beginning, it was like. So I ended up getting about 5,000 records out of there. And maybe a couple thousand of my own. And Sophia had an uncle who opened up built a couple of buildings on Dixie Highway in 138th Street. And he rented, this was like 83, 84. And he had Domino's Pizza and, a couple of other small places. And asked me if I wanted to open a store there, and rent was $500 a week. So I took my Key West collection, my own records, and boom, hung a shingle, Blue Note Records, and
next thing you know, they're coming to your door.
Yeah, that's how it was. And I was still promoting records because hey, I opened a store, because I like it. Yeah, I get a couple of Jamaican guys and R&B that were buying, Fats Domino stuff and soul stuff and. Then there were, I had the name Blue Note, so naturally I bought jazz. There was a couple of distributors that I knew, Basson's, Jerry Basson's, and they'd let me in the warehouse, and I'd special order jazz records and everything. So I started picking up. Then I was going around to my buddies at the radio stations. They were giving me tons of promos, giving them to me. Bob, hey, we don't play this shit. Take it,
Yeah.
Hey, I need this. Okay, whatever you need. It wasn't even. I'd give them fine records for the radio station format. So it was I was using everything I knew,
Right.
and pumping that stuff into the store, right. And that's how it just grew. They grew.
Yeah.
From 84 to 2009.
And
Blue Note. I was doing Jerry Basson the last year that I was in the business. I mean, well, the best year that I had, I did $900,000 with one distributor, and I was buying from 40.
Oh.
And I gave them $1 million, one distributor, but they took us everywhere. If there was a convention at the Palms or the Breakers in Palm Beach or Key West with the Neville brothers, they took us everywhere. Gave us fucking suites, rooms, artists, My daughter met, Mariah Carey, met all of her idols from growing up,
Wow.
So yeah, so it continued,
Wow.
It continued, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome to hear that.
So I mean, Blue Note did really well,
It's not just
But it was just, in 2009, it was just time. Now it ain't the same anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of great stores, but they couldn't have, and I couldn't do that again.
Well,
it was a different time.
They were lucky to make it through.
Yeah.
Radioactive, for instance.
Right.
They were lucky to make it through.
Absolutely.
And quite a few didn't.
Right.
And got to tell you, I used to make a pilgrimage to New York at least 2 to 3 times a year.
Right.
And go to the Village. I mean, I literally could park my car and just walk blocks
Yeah.
and find stores that I
Sure.
never saw before.
St. Mark's.
Now you
Village,
can't find any.
None.
St. Mark's, I don't even think has one anymore.
Real estate, man.
Yeah, and then they tell me,
CBGB's, there's a storefront now selling $50 fucking
yeah,
t-shirts.
everything is being bought up by the college.
Yeah.
And they tell me they all moved to Brooklyn.
Yep.
And it's like, so I go across the Brooklyn Bridge and I'm standing there going, where is it?
Where is it? Yeah, Bleecker Bar.
And it's just not the same,
No.
you know, so. But it's good to see the reemergence of records.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that stores can now survive. And,
Right.
you know, they got to be a little smarter.
Yeah, they do.
And-
Record store day and
Yeah.
they gotta get get more used stuff and at a decent price, and that's the key. I mean,
Yeah.
with us, what kept us alive was not making $3 on a CD, was making 300 on a Sun Ra record.
Yeah, sure.
That's what
Sure.
And then and while all the time I had the store, I was doing the Austin record fairs in the early days, even before South by Southwest.
I went out to one.
Yeah, we go out every year.
The biggest,
We do them twice a
yeah.
year, the bigger. And then the FNU show in the Village, in Chelsea.
Oh, yeah.
I did that for like 10 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, you'd go there for 3 days and walk home with $15,000.
Yeah.
I'd go up there, put everything in my SUV. 30 boxes in the SUV.
Uh-huh.
And, take Latin records to the Village, and I'd have, I'd have all like Tom Verlaine, the B-52s, I had Steely what's his name? Not Donald Fagen. I mean, we had all the good, all the customers.
I just love how you cross genres.
Yeah.
So much, and to bring out names that you kind of have to know.
Yeah.
And it's a record person that would know these.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to put Tom Verlaine in there with Steely Dan and
yeah.
to
They
me,
were
that's
all
so cool.
customers. They would, every time I go to New York, I'd go to Austin. It'd be Ian McLaughlin who lived there. I'd have Doug Son would show up. I'd have, what's his name? His keyboard player, Augie Myers.
Yeah.
Who played on She's About a Mover. From the '60s. I'd have all these characters coming to my table and like, and they were my heroes, man.
Yeah.
Met them all.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. What are the biggest musical events that you
Wow.
participated in here? A historical event.
Probably, I'd have to say, I mean, it hands down, was working with Bob Marley. When I came back for a short time, I didn't tell you, but when I came back from Boston, and just before, Dave Benjamin was still at WEA, right? He hadn't retired, and this was 1980, 81. And they offered me a job, but this time just to do Warner Brothers. And when I came down, I wanted to do independent, and that was in my mind. But I didn't. I figured it's going to take me a little while, start up, get an office.
Yeah.
So I took a job with Warner Brothers because Dave had an opening. He called me. He says, "Hey, and I said, "I'll take it." So I took that job, knowing that I wanted to do my independent. But I took the job with Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers distributed Island. So I get a call from Chris Blackwell's office, Chris Blackwell, president of Island Records, one day, and they said, "Hey, Bob, Bob Marley's coming in from Europe. Can you pick him up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Now I worked with Marley before, Rastaman Vibration, when they were independent.
Okay.
But now, so I did Rastaman Vibration, Kaya. I did a lot of, and I met him. I met him on the beach. I met him backstage at the NARM convention, NARM, when it was at the Diplomat in the '70s. So I met him. I knew him. Not that he would remember me, he's certainly going to remember Bob. So long story short, he was coming in from a European tour because back then, his records you couldn't you could get. I shot the Sheriff Clapton played, but you couldn't get his stuff played.
Right.
No Woman, No Cry. Nobody wanted to play that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So especially top 40. So I picked him up, and the album was the last album that he did was called Uprising, and there was a song on there that I said, this fucking record's a hit. It was called Uprising. I mean, Could You Be Loved? Yeah. And they did a remix on it. Like Could You Be Loved? Right? And I got it on Power. I got it on 96X, Power 96, like a disco station. but 100,000 watts, big, you know.
Yeah.
And I got that record on, and it was the first major top 40 station in America. And this is Warner Brothers. So I'm hyping the shit out of it. So, you know, this record's got legs. Y100's going to play it. I'm going to get a couple of other major stations to play it, you know. So I was promoting it. And the program director at the time was a friend. And I had Marley's itinerary. And I told the program director, I said, listen, Bruce, I said, I'm going to pick up Bob at the airport on Friday afternoon. We're going to be on the Dolphin at 2 o'clock, all right? You're on the air. You play the fucking record. I can't 100% guarantee it, but I got a good feeling about this. If he hears it, I'll try to get him to the radio station. You know, it's Bob Marley. You know what I mean? You know, there's some artists don't even want to be seen.
Right.
You know, Clapton, Van Morrison, you couldn't even go in the fucking room. You know what I mean? We don't want to see anybody. Don't want to see radio guy. Hate him. Don't want to deal with him. Right? Fine. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I said to him, but I knew Bob. Bob was, you know, different. You know. So anyway, I pick him up, and it's me, Danny Sims, who's his manager. A guy named Skills Cole, who was his boyhood best friend. He's in that documentary too. He's still alive. Danny Sims just died, the manager, and Rita. There was the three of them, right? And myself, and I have a little '76 Celica GT. Me and Bob in the front seat. I get Power 96 on. I'm on the Dolphin, and all of a sudden the record comes on. Could you be good? He talks it up and he says, "Yeah, man, this record, you know." Boom, and he plays "Could You Be Loved," and I look over at Bob, and Bob, yeah, you know, he gives me this sly grin, right? And I just kind of casually, as we're driving, smoking, right? I casually mention, I go, "Hey, Bob, would you want to go there maybe tonight, tomorrow, or something? Just, you know, late night, whatever." Yeah, man. Okay, cool. So naturally, I get Bob Marley. Now, I've got an afternoon with Bob, okay? I'm taking him to my house. I talked to Danny, his manager, 2 days before, right? You know, because we're kind of coordinating this whole thing. And I said, listen, I'm going to have, you know, I'm not going to hustle Bob to the radio station. Hey, it's Bob Marley. No, I'm going to have him come to my house in Miami Lakes. I'm on the water. Got some good hemp. Got, you know, everything you could want. You know, I had these Peruvian friends made ceviche, you know, because he didn't eat meat, and I had musicians that came over. I had a program director. I flew a guy in from Boston, WBZ, 100,000 watts station I listened to when I was 15. Right? I brought in the program director. I said, you know what? You guys are good to me. I'm gonna be good to you. You're gonna meet fucking Bob Marley, okay? So I brought in like 5 or 6 key radio guys. You didn't play his fucking records, you didn't get invited. You know? True. So I brought in some people from Y100, Power 96, different stations, right? Took Bob to the house. He got to the house. To this day, I don't know where the weed came from, because he didn't get off. I didn't see it when he got off the plane. But we sat in my office, and there was a bag, and it was full. And he rolled a spliff like a cone. And it was a cone.
Wow.
And it was Bob's stuff. And we smoked. And then he went outside, and he was playing soccer with Skills Cole, his best friend, his boyhood friend, who was running with him in the park when they found him in New York, you know, when he had passed out. But he was always on the road with Skills, because he would take him just to play soccer.
Yeah.
So Skills and Bob are in the backyard. We're smoking and drinking fine wines, and the radio people are like freaking out. We're playing great music. I got pictures over here. I'll show you. Bob's playing DJ. He's got records under his arm. He's in my office like this, pulling records, you know, turning me on to stuff, telling me about different groups in England, because he was so entrenched in the English stuff. Because he was popular there. People loved him there.
Yes.
You know, he hadn't broken here. He was opening for the Commodores, Bob Marley.
Right. And by this time, punk was starting to pick up on the reggae.
Absolutely.
Influence.
The Clash, everybody, You know, there's bands in England, the Ruts.
Yes.
They were covering punk stuff.
Yes.
And Marley.
And
Come on, it was, you know,
the ska.
The ska, Rocksteady, all that shit, right?
Yeah.
The Blue Beat.
Yeah.
You know, again, it all goes back to Chris Blackwell, you know. So it was just magical. It was, you were going back, you asked me what was it. That was magical.
That's exactly
it was
what I'm
Bob.
talking about.
and everything was down. It wasn't like, hey, we got to do this, we got to run here, you do what you want to do, man. And it was a whole afternoon. That afternoon turned into the evening. That evening turned into the morning. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I went to that radio station with Bob. And we did the interview.
Wow.
Yeah. And we did, he went in and Bob played DJ. Bob played Curtis Mayfield records, Motown records, And then we got on the phones, right? And the phones were like, it was a bank of phones. And I remember the lights was like Christmas tree. And people, we were like, Bob was, they just had him, and we sat in the chairs, and we had the monitor on, so we didn't have to get, hello.
Yeah.
And they were like, and everybody that called was a relative, a cousin, a friend, but knew him from Kingston. Everybody knew Bob, had a story, and he was in full patois. You could hardly understand. He was talking to the Jamaican community, and it went out, and it was magic. He was playing records, and Bob, I'm telling you, and he was just talking to the people. Okay, thanks. Next caller, Bob. He's Rastafari. I, just on and on and on, and we went into like 5 a.m. And I ended up taking him at 5:30 to Sedella's house, which was the house that he bought for his mother. Right, and he and that was Friday into Saturday into Sunday morning, and then Monday I went to pick him up. I left, Sunday he needed the day to recuperate, and he had to get on the plane because he was opening for the Commodores that Thursday. So this was Monday that I picked him up, and when I got to Sedella's house, I picked up again the same Rita and Danny and Bob, and took him to the airport, and I got a call on Friday, 4 days later, that Bob had collapsed in Central Park.
That's what happened. I wasn't even aware of exactly what happened.
He had collapsed 4 days after I took him to the airport. Yeah, and they took him to Sloan Kettering. They diagnosed the toe.
Cancer.
Cancer. Yeah. The tumor had spread.
Okay.
Yeah, and being Rastafarian, he didn't. Had he they amputated it, but he wouldn't let him do it. And so I was with him that weekend, the last weekend.
Crazy.
And the last show, he did one more show. He went to Pittsburgh. He did a show in Pittsburgh, and if you listen to that last show, this is the Pittsburgh show right here, Live Forever. Live Forever. If you hear that, you knew it. You knew it, and I think he knew it. I mean, it's such a powerful performance.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, that was the last show. But certainly that weekend with Bob was one of the magical, and then, we just took photos, and I had a chance to really talk to him and meet him, and he signed this thing, One Love, to me, and it's like, wow.
What's the biggest mistakes that the record business has made?
A&R. I just think it's artists and repertoire. I don't think they're signing the real artists anymore.
Well,
there are great artists out there. Then they don't make it to that like super level. You know what I mean? Like when you had Atlantic and Warner Brothers in the 70s, those labels really cared, and they nurtured, and they worked, and promotion and marketing was so much a part of it. Granted, they're homegrown, they're doing their thing, they're down, but they're not. Are they making any? They're not making any money on CDs.
No,
you know what I mean?
No. And the record companies are not behind them.
Yeah, and Spotify. These guys. You think I listen to? Why should I pay them, for Christ's sakes? They don't pay the artists. These guys are getting nothing. They're not getting any checks from these labels. Whereas when we were selling records,
they're not getting any promotion from their record companies or record labels, I should say. This is not a company anymore; it's a label.
And radio. Look at what radio. It's one radio station. Before you could get, there was so much diversity. Top 40 would play Hall & Oates, and would play BTO, and would play Chuck Mangione, would play, you could get everything. If it was a good record, it was a good record.
Right.
Today, that doesn't exist.
Right.
No matter what town you go to, you put the radio on, it's the same 20 songs.
Right.
And none of them, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
That didn't exist. You had music directors, that had ears. You could sit with them on a Tuesday and say, listen, I've done a lot of homework. I've got this on Orlando. I got it on L.A. It's on Wixie in Cleveland. It's on ABC. And so you know, if you play, you're not going to be the only one.
Right.
I mean, I knew there was the records were. I mean, they were great. You know, well, my program director's trying to hold. You know, but there was always a reason. But they played them. But you could get to them. You could surround them. When the disco era came in, that was great. That was more exposure. You get stuff played in the clubs. The clubs would force the R&B stations to play it.
Right.
They would surface.
Right.
The R&B station, if it was a crossover, like a BTO, you ain't seen nothing yet. You could get that from a top 40 to an R&B station, you know?
Right.
And vice versa. You know, Hall & Oates they played, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Top 40 played it, R&B played it. Bob Skaggs, I used to call him my brother, you know, low down. No, Bob's black. No, he ain't black. Bob Skaggs is white. You know?
Right.
They play low down. Yeah, but you'd hear it on. Yeah, I go to EDR. I could get Bob Skaggs played. You know.
Right.
And then cross it to top 40. You know. I came up at a time where this stuff could happen. I was blessed. I was so happy.
It was the growth of all these.
Yeah, it was.
That you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Muddy Waters and
Yep.
Alan Wolf. Those were kids then.
Yeah.
And bringing this whole new thing around and integrating it.
And it took the Rolling Stones to come to America and you know, bring Howlin' Wolf to you know, to the public, you know, on the Tammy show.
Yeah.
And you know, giving us Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and Elmore James and all of the great blues artists, Muddy, back to us again.
Yes.
For, you know, the whole British invasion brought the blues back to, you know, get Muddy back on the road, get Buddy Guy working again, get Willie Dixon acknowledged.
And I'll say, when
Howlin'
that
Wolf.
first happened, the English invasion, and shortly thereafter, I would hear about the Stones and Zeppelin and how they were playing blues.
Yeah.
American blues.
Right.
And I tried to listen to American blues, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It was too raw for me then.
Right.
And then about 10, 15 years ago, I started playing cards. And my rock and roll, I'm a little bit towards the punk thing, was too intrusive to the game.
Yeah.
So I picked up like some old blues sampler. And I put that on, and I realized it just went with the game. And it flowed.
Absolutely, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I started listening to blues.
Blues, yeah.
And I used to hear, again, being a big Dolls fan, David Johansen used to always credit Little Milton as
that's right.
harmonica inspiration. And I said, who the hell could ever listen to an album where the harmonica is the lead instrument? And then I got the Little Milton album, and I said, wow.
This guy's a mother.
This is crazy.
And David was doing Bo Diddley's Pills. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah, those guys were all influenced by this.
Oh,
shit,
all of
you
them.
know? Yeah.
And you know, the funny thing is I found that even though I call the music that I come from punk music, in reality, I come from roots music.
Yeah.
Because all that punk music that I listened to was really roots music.
Oh, yeah.
Not the hardcore of the Misfits and that type of stuff.
Right.
It was a little more just R&B based.
Yeah.
You know, maybe a little more choppy or something. But yeah, I finally, after all those years of Ralph telling me to listen to the blues, I finally got in the blues.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
We're going to end this on that.
Beautiful, man.
All right, brother.
Hey, man, it's been fun.
That was awesome.
It's been fun.
Thanks for joining us on The Record Beat. Join us next time for more perspectives on the record business.